Internet, welcome to episode 259 of the Assorted Calibers podcast, the Second Amendment podcast that is a little bit for everyone. I'm Erin doing my not quite Fran Drescher voice, and with me tonight is a round table. So of course we have the usual co-host Weer'd. Say hello, Weer'd.
Hello, Weer'd.
Beautiful. And of course, we've got the rest of the bullpen. We have the oddest of balls, Oddball.
Hello.
And the man who's not exactly named after a machine gun, David Brenner Bach. How are you doing, darling? All right, that's enough of that. That's going to kill my throat.
Yeah, that was great, though. You're using that, right, Weer'd?
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. That was amazing, Erin.
Thank you.
How are you doing, Erin?
Well, it's not last week. If I have another week like last week within like the next month or whatever, I think I'm going to need to check into someplace for a while. It was super duper bad. And I'm kind of impressed I got through it. How are you doing? Because I understand you've been on a road trip out of state.
I mean, only briefly. Where my daughter, we asked my daughter what we want to do because sometimes we sign up for various summer camps and activities around in the area, and she just said no. She wants just to spend the weeks at my parents' house and the weekends here, and so it is Monday, and I returned her to Maine. And she is, I'm sure, having a grand old time, and with my folks who are now settling into their life in a retirement community on the ocean. So it's good times to be had. So she's swimming in the community center pool, or she's swimming in the ocean.
Okay.
And I have been doing a very, very poor job of sleeping, either due to staying up late doing podcasts and then being woken up early by my family, or just waking up early and just suddenly my mind racing, such as me just waking up and thinking about baguettes. And that sometimes happens in my brain. And then I have to go downstairs and check on the bread because it'll wait, but not my brain. And so it's not a question of when, but a question of not a question of if, but when I fall asleep during this podcast. So that'll be everyone's fun thing of I wonder if Weer'd fell asleep.
Je m'appelle Weer'd. Je suis une baguette. Voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir?
Well played. Lady Marmalade.
So we just watched an episode of What We Do in the Shadows tonight. We're closing on the end of the season. And at this club, one of the characters says, "Oh, it has a little bit of that je ne sais quoi." And one of the other characters just starts talking to her in French. And she breaks the fourth wall and says, "He's obviously brain damaged. That was all gibberish."
I still get a huge kick out of the in Austin Powers, where he says he has what the French say I don't know what. It just loses all its mystique when you translate it into English.
Yes.
As does French numbers.
Well, French numbers, I believe, are base 20.
Well, the thing is, once you get to about 60, they get really weird.
I mean, it's the French. Of course they get weird.
And again, the entire language was written by the Typesetters Union.
Probably not too far off.
We didn't ask Oddball how Oddball's doing. How's Oddball doing?
Oh, pretty good.
That's all you got?
Yeah, it's pretty much all I got.
We didn't ask David how he's doing either.
Oh, I thought we did.
No, that was before the show.
No, he just started talking.
All right, yeah.
Okay, so with French, counting up to 69, nice,
Nice.
is normal. Once you hit 70, you don't say 70, you use 60-10. And so after that, you keep tacking numbers 10 through 19 on the end of 60 until you get to 80. And then when you get to 80, they say Kotvinks, or however you pronounce it, because I don't do French very well, and that's 420. And then when you get
Nice.
and then when you get to 90, you get 420-10. It's truly bizarre. It's, we are France, we count differently.
But now at least we know that the French are also stoners, and that was the origin of the whole 420 thing. That makes a lot more sense.
Good luck wrestling control of this, Weer'd.
I mean, I'm just letting it happen.
It's really for the best.
Just like
He's just holding on to the handles of the raft and letting it go through the rapids.
It's an ACP Round Table, and if the people didn't love us, they're not listening.
So you're just going to lie back and think of England.
Who are bothered by me and bothered by the rest of us, and those are people that don't listen to our podcast.
Valid.
But David, did you talk about how you've been?
No, I did not. What may I?
No. Of course you may.
Last week I somehow picked up a stomach bug, and I don't know how, because I didn't leave the house. So it must have been something food related. And speaking of food related, we found out that we have mice in the basement, which is the first time since we moved here 6 years ago. So we had to readjust the positioning of our food stores, because we had backup food stored in a cabinet in the basement, and so we just moved all of the plastic containers out of that and put the glass and metal containers in its place. So it was an unexpected chore.
By the way, David, do you know who invented the kill bar mousetrap?
John Browning?
That would be a good guess, but it is not the correct guess.
Hiram Maxim?
Hiram Maxim.
I knew it was one of those two guys. Although there is also my favorite mousetrap.
Oh, the one with the
American
pistol.
of mousetraps.
Yeah, I was about to ask who invented that one.
I don't know, but there is a gun. It was patented. James Williams of Fredonia, Texas.
Of course, it was a Texan.
And there we go. I put the link in here in the chat. Good times.
And I've got the Sean Woods cannon style mousetrap.
So you wait for the mouse to crawl down the cannon barrel, and then you launch it?
You put like a piece of cheese in front of the barrel, and when the mouse walks up to it, his back brushes up against the trigger and slips it off the sear, causing it to detonate the percussion cap.
That looks like the other one with more steps.
And then I don't know if you're supposed to load it with a ball or just let the powder explosion do the damage, because as a general rule, a blank at that range is just as deadly as a bullet.
I suppose.
Oddball posted the lovely
squirrel
trap
launcher. Yeah. No, it's a squirrel launcher.
The person's was that a cat inside too? Yes, you can see a cat walk up to the window to look at the squirrel, and then gets terrified as the squirrel goes supersonic.
As the squirrel is launched into orbit.
The person who set that up, for those that don't know, this is a fairly older video of someone who set up essentially a squirrel launcher that is a salad bowl with the rubber hosing and some sort of sear system. I can't really see how the sear works, but they put nuts in the bowl and the squirrel gets onto it, and it sends the squirrel straight into the tree line, because the person who did that set up a camera also inside their house, and the squirrel does make a very, very nice arc.
And there is a dog or a cat inside that glass door that is very interested until the squirrel is launched.
You may be seeing the it was actually tethered,
reflection?
and the owner cut the tethering
Okay.
string with some scissors, and that's what's inside the glass door there.
Yep. And right below that, I tossed in a link to the actual U.S. government patent website link to that particular patent for the Texans gun mousetrap. So you can get the full force of the diagram as well as the descriptive text. Be it known that I, J. Alexander Williams of Fredonia in the county of San Saba and state of Texas, have invented certain new and useful improvements in animal traps. And then he goes on to describe it.
For when you absolutely need a mouse turned into jam.
It's got to be jam because jelly don't shake like that.
Oh, well, shall we move into the news of the day?
I mean, why start now?
If we have to, I guess.
We could not. It's a round table. There are no rules.
I thought there were no rules for mag dumps. There were rules for round tables.
Well, we could say that there's no rules. We could change the rules and make the rule be no rules.
Fine, I'll take my pants off.
Thank you.
Dun 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 dun.
We were supposed to be wearing pants?
No one expects you to wear pants, Oddball.
Okay, good.
Oddball, do you own pants?
He does.
I do.
Why?
Because I have to go into the office sometimes.
And they have a no kilt policy?
Okay, I know that you said no kilt, but it sounded like no kill, and that was funny.
Well,
I mean-
it's even more funny considering their senior facilities. That's just wrong, but funny.
Oddball can't make it today because he's been put down.
No.
Calling in dead.
Oh dear.
My boss has asked me not to wear a kilt in the office.
What if it's a dress kilt?
That's what I told him. I could definitely, dress it up and it would definitely qualify as formal wear. And no. Oh.
So are female employees allowed to wear skirts?
Yes.
That's discrimination.
Yes, it is.
There's a lawsuit right there.
Actually, Oddball, do you have any Scottish heritage?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, so therefore you could just tell me you identify as a Scotsman.
I mean,
Although, according to one of my Scottish friends, who made the comment one time that anyone who wears a kilt but isn't Scottish is wearing a skirt.
And Oddball is a pretty princess.
I don't disagree. She's a very, very large, tired princess.
All right, I'm wrestling this back into over to news. To lead off, I just wanted to say I don't have a whole lot in there because there's a lot of just inside baseballs and rumors and rumblings that are going on. But I actually, in trying to find some more concrete stuff that I heard about.
Concrete? Is that a crate that you get at a convention?
Yes. I was looking up some information on this new anti-gun bill that is wiggling its way through the various committees in the legislature, and I found two essentially just mainstream news articles that absolutely were giving a ton of pushback to it, which was great. I was very, very surprised that they weren't just rubber stamping it.
Did I miss the part where you mentioned this is the law in your state?
No, you didn't miss it because you didn't say it.
Okay, yeah.
Cool. This law's in Massachusetts. This is what the Gun Owners Action League of Massachusetts has identified as the Lawful Citizens Imprisonment Act, which
yeah, we talked about it. I don't know if it was last week or week beforehand, but it's just a whole mess of awful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, and just one clarification for pedantry purposes. Weer'd doesn't live in a state.
It's true. It's a commonwealth.
Yes.
And it's also not in America because
West Morocco.
Because they present this crap. But there's a bunch of stuff pushing forward and noting, because the big thing that they keep trying to do is state that, oh, this is just common sense gun laws, despite the fact that it is literally if it passes, I mean, it may not be the most anti-gun thing ever proposed in the United States, but it certainly would be the most anti-gun thing to pass if it does pass. and it would firmly move Massachusetts into the most anti-gun state in the union. To take that
For now. Yeah. California, New York, New Jersey will be right there snapping at our heels.
New Jersey's almost always an also ran. It's a pretty crappy place to be a gun owner, but it's not as crappy as the big it's the same thing with Illinois. Illinois is pretty bad, but not that bad.
Yeah.
So
with Illinois, once you get out of Chicago, mostly law enforcement doesn't care, from what I've heard from folks who live there. But yeah, New York, Massachusetts, California, yeah. And Connecticut has been trying hard lately, too.
Connecticut's just been trying very hard, as is Rhode Island.
Yeah, but no one cares about Rhode Island. Well, unless they're measuring something that's not terribly big.
Rhode Island is exactly one Rhode Island in size.
Yes. And the tornado covered an area twice the size of Rhode Island and things like that. Or the meteorite was half the size of Rhode Island.
Americans will use anything to measure other than the metric system.
True.
Unless it's calibers or drugs.
The size of half a giraffe.
Oh, that one. I love that. It's my favorite. Right up there with the size of a medium-sized hippo.
Yes. A rock the size of a large rock.
Yes. But the medium-sized hippo one is particularly funny because how many Americans have actually seen a hippo with any way to judge its size?
Yeah.
I mean, if they said it was the height of a large refrigerator, most people could figure that one out. But of a medium-sized hippopotamus, I mean, unless they got one for Christmas.
The zoo in Boston, the zoo in Boston has a pygmy hippo.
Well, that's not a medium-sized hippo now, is it?
For that species of hippo, it might even be a large one.
It might be a large pygmy hippo, but it is not a medium-sized hippo.
I don't even know if a hippo is a hippo. There might be different subspecies of hippo.
Well, there is legislation preventing us from talking too much about them without their permission. You're familiar with the hippo legislation?
Okay, so other than David, who else has been drinking tonight?
All I had was a ginger ale and water.
Because
I'm just very short on sleep.
I may have had a drink slightly right after lunch just to get me through editing the latest blooper reel, but I knew that would put me directly to sleep, so I'm abstaining.
I mean, I'm just saying, y'all sound super duper punchy, and I know David doesn't drink alcohol, but I have to wonder about the rest of y'all.
Yeah, no, for me it's just I'm punchy from lack of sleep because it's not been good sleeping for me lately.
Either way, the last little bit on this for the inside baseball is that right now there's a little bit of a pissing contest going on because the legislator that presented the bill is in the Judiciary Committee, and he presented it to the Judiciary Committee because he is one of the co-chairs of that. But in fact, it's often put up in the Public Safety Committee for firearms bills, and so there's currently a parliamentary discussion at whether or not the bill can be presented in the current committee or if it needs to be relocated. And they're having a hearing on the bill that is closed to the public.
Well, that's just a sign of quality legislation right there. When it's closed to the public or it's hustled through in the dead of night.
Oh, always.
I see it as going down as one of two ways. Either it's a smoky room cabal to figure out the best way to get it out of committee and passed, or it is they know that they're going to get substantial blowback, including from Democrats who again understand their constituents did not buy guns to go turn them in. And they will essentially kill it in committee, but only time will tell.
I mean, I'm just saying this is starting to stink like 2013's New York SAFE Act.
Oh yeah.
No, if it was more like New York's 2013 SAFE Act, it would have already been passed at 2 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we don't need you peons to know what we're going to impose on you.
I mean, Massachusetts is simply doing the its own version of that 90s drug PSA. I learned it from watching you. There's a reason why, like, Massachusetts was the last state to have a retaliation law to NYSERPA v. Bruin, and so we were sitting and watching and figuring out the best way to do it, the best quote unquote.
Yeah.
I've got another one here that will lead into a story that Erin definitely wants to talk about, and it's just a really quick one. Is I don't even actually have really the background on where the heck this came from. I don't even pretend to understand how California's handgun roster works. I barely understand Massachusetts. But California has added a new gun to their handgun roster, and it is the Sig 320. And no, this is a legit one. This is not the single shot needs to be modified.
Okay.
This is the, it says right here, the 3.9 inch barrel.
I did a search based on that model number and not coming up with anything really super helpful, but it does show pictures of them with a detachable magazine. So there's that. But also on that California roster list of recently added handguns, they have 5 different models of HK P2000 V3, which is basically 5 different finishes of the same gun.
Mm-hmm.
And one that surprised me, Ruger SP101, which I thought was already on there. That's the 327 caliber one. That's why.
Classy.
That's nice. That is a nice little gun. But it is surprising. Now, does that mean that they have to remove X number of other guns from the roster because new ones have been added?
I have no earthly idea.
I thought that was part of...
I heard that, but it might have been stayed. I don't even pretend to understand how this works. I just, for whatever reason, they added a legit functional striker-fired pistol, and obviously it does not have the...
micro stamping.
Micro stamping. So that's a thing, and of course also as we talked about with Clark, however many shows ago, with the I think it was the Franklin Armory California compliant 320 that was simply a single shot gun.
But it had the fire control group.
Yes, it had the fire control group, so therefore you could just take all the California compliant off of it and reinstall it on a real Sig P320.
Yep. But honestly, the HK P2000 is surprising as well. Yes, it's hammer fired, but still. Oddball, you have one of those, don't you?
No, I've got a, and now I'm blinking out on the P30.
Okay, is that the
hammer fired?
The P2000's hammer fired, according to the pictures.
Yeah, the P2000's hammer fired. I believe
So it might just be the next generation incorporating some of the... Because I can see there's a little button on the back by the hammer as a decocker.
Yeah. The P30 I think is a significantly different gun. HK does have a striker fired that is remarkably close to it. I'm trying to remember what it is.
But so
they do look remarkably similar in a lot of respects, the P30 and the P2000. But I mean, it's HK. A lot of their semi-autos have similar lines.
Yeah, it's the VP9 is the striker fired, essentially the striker fired version of the P30.
Okay, but without any more ado, shall we get to the article that Erin would like to discuss?
Well, I think that would be nice. So we have talked in the past, albeit briefly, about BioFire and their smart gun. It's probably got a technical name that I'm blanking on at the moment, but it's actually received fairly good reviews from Gun Jesus. And so if Gun Jesus declares that a smart gun doesn't suck, it must have something going for it. And so this happened like over a month ago. It was back in June. And I mailed it to Weer'd, and I said, we should talk about this. And he completely dropped the ball, but not that I'm, keeping score or anything.
But who's counting?
Right. But since we were talking about the California handgun roster, I thought this would be a fantastic time to talk about it. And so BioFire has actually filed an amicus brief in support of the case known as Boland v. Bonta, which is challenging the California handgun roster, which I believe they call the Unsafe Handgun Act. And, well, all right, on the face of it, this is very much something that will benefit them because they are a firearm manufacturer and they want their handgun on the roster. But I think that there's more to it than that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because there is a link to the letter, in the show notes. And I think that it skewers California very nicely because, okay, I'll read parts of it. Although the UHA's stated goal is safety, BioFire asserts that the UHA stifles innovation in firearm safety in two ways. Then it goes on to talk about how microstamping is, specific, novel, never before commercialized technology, and honestly hasn't worked. The UHA requires emerging companies like BioFire to spend their money on implementing the government's, and here I quote, specifically and arbitrarily designated technology, unquote. They point out that no company has implemented microstamping in a commercial firearm in the more than 15 years since it was introduced, and it comes at the expense of developing and implementing other safety innovations like theirs, the biometric authentication. So really what they're saying is, because of this stupid law you have, we can't bring our much better safety technology to play because you want us to use this other thing which hasn't ever been made to work.
Yes. Would you mind also taking a look at the next paragraph down?
I'm not done yet. And so then they make the second point, and this one is even better. And it says, and I actually didn't know this about California's UHA because I don't live there. And apparently the law for the UHA says that 3 pistols has to be removed from the roster for everyone that is added, which is all sorts of awful. Yeah. And so BioFire points out that this creates a zero-sum game that puts emerging companies in the position of being the bad guy because they have to then remove firearms that other customers prefer with no discernible safety benefit. And so, you are not only penalizing Californians' choice, but again, look, we're trying to make a safe gun. California says it wants safety, right? Well, how can we possibly succeed if you're going to make us the enemy of gun owners? And I really like this because it may not exactly be a Morton's fork, but it really puts California on the hot seat because it says, you claim you want safety. You're making it really hard for us to bring this very safe smart gun to market. Why are you doing that? Do you truly want safety, or are you just lying and you really just you want to restrict firearms, period? And I thought this was really neat. And so, I mean, yes, BioFire has an agenda. They are a firearms company. They want their thing to go to market. I can't really fault them for that. But if they win, or I should say if they help Boland win, then I think this is a win not only for all gun owners, but for gun companies in general. So BioFire is to a certain extent helping its competitors, and I really respect that.
Yeah. In the press release prior to the actual text of the amicus brief, there's the last line in that, which I think is something that more firearms companies should really pay attention to. BioFire will always actively fight against mandates for new technology, even when policies seem to favor BioFire's business. If it's not right for everyone, it's not right for us.
Yes.
That is beautiful. Chef's kiss right there.
So, yeah, good for them, good for BioFire. Even if I will never own one of their guns, I really have to respect their integrity in this matter.
Yeah, agreed. And honestly, because of this, I am much more likely to maybe someday own one of their guns.
Mm-hmm.
I had no interest whatsoever, but I feel that behavior and moral stances like this should be supported.
Reward the behavior you want to see.
Correct. So good for them.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully good for us. And eventually, if this goes the way we hope it does, good for Weer'd, but bad for his bank account.
Yeah, but who cares about that?
I certainly won't.
Just money. You can't take it with you.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
no,
I'm done.
They have good technology, and I like the fact that actually in one interview that I saw with the president of BioFire, he essentially just said, "Yeah, I've got my politics. I don't want to talk about them, but we're definitely opposing the politics of all gun control, which is awesome."
And again, good for him.
All right, so the next one I've got here is it was actually it's an interesting story. It's not a great story, but essentially the killer from the Nice vehicle killing, this person was
I think we can call it a mass killing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it was
86 people died, 450 were injured.
Mm-hmm. And
that's definitely qualifies as a mass killing.
With a truck driving through an open air market, and so
a high capacity assault truck.
Yes,
it's a 19-ton cargo truck.
Mm-hmm.
That's a high capacity assault truck.
That is. But the title of this is "In a Deserted Courtroom, the grim details of Nice atrocity go mostly unnoticed," and it's just saying that the overall feel of the story is that there's not it's just an empty courtroom where this guy's being tried, and the people are just not as up in arms because no gun.
Yep. But it also mentions the article. The attack on the Charlie Hebdo office, the Hyper Caché supermarket, the attack on the Stade de France, the Bataclan concert attack, that's still very much in the public consciousness, but no one much remembers the attack on Nice. And then this part. Why? Well, the Nice attack is like Apollo 12. No one remembers the names of anyone involved. It's bad to be second or third. Also, and the French are rather snooty about the provinces generally, but Nice in particular. It's hard for Brits to realize because we think the south of France is hugely glamorous, but Parisians think of Nice as Stoke or Belfast with sunshine.
And then there's a snotty comment about, oh, those South Parisians, or South French, they're practically Italian.
Yes. They vote right-wing and are almost Italian, so you're allowed to disdain them.
So put another way, Nice is flyover country for France.
More or less. And he also makes the comment that it might also be about the dead children because that's a really bad optic. I'm like, I can see that why the media choosing not to cover it because it doesn't help advance their program, but that doesn't explain why the French people have generally just let it go.
Which is unusual because, I mean, here in America, that's all we would hear about it. And I don't know if that's cultural differences or if it's because they've got stricter gun control in France, and so whoever well, I mean, I started to say something like the media, and I'm trying not to sound like a tinfoil wearing conspiracy theorist, but Okay, I think we can agree that in this country there is clearly an agenda in reporting, and they want to sensationalize deaths, specifically the deaths of children, if it'll get them what they want, which is, restricting guns. And so maybe it's because there is, France doesn't have a Second Amendment. There is less of a gun ownership culture. Maybe that is... it's not of concern, and so that's why they aren't blood dancing, is I think what I was stumbling towards.
But it's also, I'm reading further into the article, and there was one bit, where was it? There was one day of big box office. The ex-president François Hollande testified, after a month of humble guilt and shame from the innocent, we had a day of absolute blamelessness. When there is an attack, it follows that there has been a failure, said Hollande. But the failure was not his. He had been impeccable throughout. It is doubtless naive of me to expect anything from a politician, but the moral contrast with the victims was nauseating.
Well, and I think it's one of the big things of if Nice is, in fact, the equivalent of flyover country for France, unless if there is an agenda, it's going to disappear quickly.
Yeah.
That's happened a lot in the U.S. where, we can't push a narrative that we want with this tragedy or that tragedy in Kansas, Tennessee, wherever.
Right.
Okay, whatever. It might as well have not happened.
Yeah. And how many people outside the firearms community know the name Eli Dickin?
Yeah, unfortunately, not that many.
Right. Because of the choice by the media not to cover that, because that is exactly the kind of story that would make people feel better in some respects. But anywho,
Oddball, you were talking about Tennessee, and we've got something going on in Tennessee.
There
are several things paralleling in Tennessee.
So there's supposed to be a special session in August that our wonderful governor has pushed for to pass a red flag law and who knows what else in response to the school shooting that we had recently. And there is rumor that he and creators of the bill that will, in theory, be proposed at that time have been talking with the NRA and about making sure that this red flag law respects people's due rights, or rather that there's due process, etc. And
it doesn't go. The Senate Speaker Pro Tem said he can't support Lee's proposed extreme risk protection order or red flag bill because it doesn't go far enough in providing the constitutional right of due process. I would have said protecting instead of providing, but whatever.
Of course, also one of the Tennessee three already has a laundry list of bills that he's wanting to submit during this special session.
For those of our listeners who have already forgotten, would you mind describing who the Tennessee three are? And then have a drink.
These are the three idiots who decided to disrupt the state legislature while it was in session. And then when the Republican, in order to support, to scream for gun control, and when the Republican-led majority fell for the trap and threw two of them out of office, who were instantly sent back by the districts that they represented. So all they got was, oh, hey, we got a huge amount of publicity and Biden inviting them to the White House, et cetera, et cetera. And that's really as far as I want to go into that.
Yes, now have a drink.
But as some of our state legislature have pointed out, why have a special session in August when I think session resumes in September? And obviously you were willing to wait a couple months after the event happened, so it's not so you can't really say it's terribly pressing. So I'm fairly confident that the Republican majority in our state Senate is going to kill any of the anti-gun bills that come up during the session.
Yeah, but we shouldn't rest on that hope, and any Tennessee residents listening to our podcast should reach out to their state legislature.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Because that's the complacency is what really kills us a lot of the times. Oh, they'll never pass that bill, and then we ignore it, and suddenly we wake up in the morning and things have happened. That was we already mentioned the New York Unsafe Act in 2013. We went to sleep sure that pardon? I heard someone else say something. But we went to sleep thinking that our Senate Republican majority had our backs and woke up to find a knife in it.
The thing that I have always found funny about the SAFE Act, and of course it didn't affect anything and it was patched quickly, but in their haste to pass it, they completely neglected to think about the fact to include a law enforcement cutout.
Yes.
And so there was a time when the police couldn't carry,
more than 7 rounds in their magazines.
What large capacity magazines. I mean, obviously they did, and no one stopped them. But
there were actually several police agencies in the state that had discussions, and at least one that ordered its officers to download the magazines in accordance with the law.
I'm surprised. I just thought they were going to shrug and go, who's going to arrest us? Us? Haha.
Well, there are some sheriffs, and as you get out of the large urban areas, more and more of the sheriffs actually believe in the Constitution and force of law and obeying the law. Now, if you look at the number of New York sheriffs that made public statements against the SAFE Act after it was rammed through, it's pretty impressive. So this is at least a few years old, but that was the counties that put out resolutions opposing the SAFE Act in green. Okay,
so I understand Albany County because that's where the state capital is. And I understand, I can't quite see all of them, but that's basically, New York City and Long Island.
Yep, and Westchester.
Yeah. So my question is, what's the one there in the center? Tompkins, I think it is.
Binghamton. That is...
The prison?
It's a... SUNY Binghamton is located there, State University of New York. And it is a very odd county. We'll just be polite.
Okay.
But yeah, Tompkins is kind of, it's just, it's their thing.
So I get the feeling that what you're trying to say, at least among other things, is that because it's a college town, it's therefore very liberal.
It has that tendency. However, there are a number of other counties in New York that are also college towns, like Wayne County for Rochester or Clinton County for Plattsburgh. But for some reason, Tompkins County, specifically the city of Binghamton, which is the largest population center in that county, for some reason they tend to follow Albany.
Huh. Okay.
Yes.
Hey, is Weer'd even awake?
How can we tell?
I mean, it's just he hasn't said anything, and usually he's the loud, gregarious Muppet.
I told you I was tired.
Yeah.
Well, have a cigarette and launch the missiles, then take a nap.
Yes. I don't even know where the show notes we are.
Yeah. Do you want me to put the New York SAFE Act resolutions link in the show notes?
Oh, sure.
It doesn't hurt.
Okay. I can do that. Your sake act resolutions.
Okay, this is a new show note. I don't know when this got added, but who added the FPC tweet?
Well,
I was the one who shared that in the chat.
Do you want to take it away, David?
Sure, I can take it away. Where do you want me to take it?
Take it
away
right
is
to listeners' ear holes.
Should take it to the limit one more time?
Yes.
All right. So this is, and I don't know the larger context for some of this because it's on Twitter and I'm not. So I just have this basically screenshot effectively. But it's the Firearms Policy Coalition. And their statement is, the lawsuit claims the gun store is liable because a customer testing the weight of the trigger pull is a red flag. And then if you take a look at the actual screenshot, upon information and belief, these red flags included but are not necessarily limited to Gendron's youth, 18 years old, the unique lethality of AR-15 style firearms like the weapon. That's a new one on me. The fact that few law-abiding purchasers near vintage firearms locations seek out such a gun for lawful uses such as hunting. Gendron's behavior when purchasing the weapon, such as seeking a Bushmaster AR-15 in particular, or in testing the weight of the trigger pull, and despite living only a 25 minutes drive from vintage firearms, Gendron not being a target shooting enthusiast, sportsman, or hunter known to vintage firearms, or part of a legitimate gun group.
Okay, someone is acting as if I know all the details of this case and I don't. What's going on here?
I don't know either. This is all the information I had, but it was just the fact the statements of the unique lethality of AR-15 style firearms, and that one of the red flags was the guy testing the weight of the trigger pull. So I don't know the case they're referencing. Obviously, there's a person named Gendron. There's vintage firearms, but it's obviously a lawsuit, I would guess, against vintage firearms. So let me see if I can pull that up.
Yeah, by the sounds of it, it is the Gendron did something naughty, and they are trying to sue the store, saying that the store should have known that he was going to do something naughty with the gun.
Okay, what state is this?
I still haven't found.
This is New York. This is
the Buffalo shooting.
Yeah, this is the gun store that sold the New York compliant firearm to the killer, who then modified it back into its original configuration.
Wait, are we talking about the grocery shooting?
Yes, the Tops grocery store shooting.
Okay.
Now, interesting is while I was looking at this, I found a link to an ABC. Hold on a second. I'll put that in the show notes as well if I can get. Oh, come on! There we go. But it's the headline of this ABC article is "Loved Ones of Buffalo Mass Shooting Victims Sue Social Media, Gun and Body Armor Companies." So the suing of the social media is the interesting one. But I will toss that in here.
But you do get a love that it's a red flag to test the trigger or just to be interested in an AR-15 at all.
Mm-hmm.
You know how many fewer guns we would sell if testing the trigger was a red flag?
All of them?
Well, they're also working in the catch-22. We need to ban AR-15s because they're too dangerous. Never mind the fact that, of course, AR-15s are almost never used in crime, and not even the majority of spree killers use AR-15s. And we got a dude in France that killed a whole bunch of people with a truck.
Yeah, but that doesn't count.
And never mind to talk to any service member that served in Iraq and Afghanistan about their concerns about roadside bombs. But the idea that, we need to ban these guns so they're not going through, and we need to shut down these gun stores. Well, what's the problem? Well, they're selling these guns that are legal, and just the idea that people might even want these guns is a red flag.
Yep. Yeah, if it's right up there with a statement that was made by one New York State legislature that was basically boiled down to someone who expresses an interest in carrying a firearm should not be allowed to get a handgun license.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, you're clearly bloodthirsty.
So then who would be getting the handgun license?
Only people who don't want to carry firearms.
Then why would they be getting a carry license?
That's the idea.
And there's even the double catch-22 is that if you are someone that is not comfortable or interested in carrying a firearm, I will strongly advise you not to.
Oh, yeah.
Because again, it's the same idea of we can only have firearms that are used for hunting and sport shooting. Well, if the only reason why you have firearms is to do target practice or to hunt animals, it's not a very illogical statement to say, why don't you just take up golf and then go to the Safeway?
A golf course is a horrible misuse of a shooting range.
Oh, I 100% agree. They even have the yardage written down, and they put the little flags for the.
I was going to say, windsocks. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I did toss in the article from ABC News about the lawsuit. So there's more context to that snippet.
And at the bottom of the tweet from the Firearms Policy Center, it does say, upon information and belief, Vintage Firearms negligently transferred the weapon to person despite being presented with an obvious collection of red flags that provided it with actual and blah, 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 blah. So, yeah.
Because he was interested in a particular firearm, and he tested the trigger pull, and he wasn't known to them as a hunter or target shooter. So this is right up there with what, as friend of the show with common name talks about, is raising the barriers to entry.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not a known hunter or target shooter, then it should be a red flag that you're interested in buying a gun. Well, then that means no more new gun owners, because they can't be a known hunter or target shooter if they don't have a firearm.
Shh, you're saying the quiet part out loud.
It's a feature.
And I will continue to say the quiet part out loud to expose the hypocrisy and disingenuousness of these vultures until they are driven from polite society. Anywho, so that was that lawsuit, and that's where that came from. So.
Yep. And I've also got another tweet from the Firearms Policy Coalition that I believe did you also find this one, David, or did I get this from friend of the show with a common name?
I've seen it, but I don't remember who sourced it. But I did think it was funny.
Yes. The title is "They Managed to Piss Off the Judge Even More."
Yeah, this is Jasmine et al. Versus Daniel Defense LLC et al.
This is out of Texas.
Yes.
So again, what's this about?
The court considers the prior show cause order and the plaintiff's response. The plaintiffs were given 14 days to serve all the defendants. This additional 14 days came 7 months after the plaintiffs filed this case and still had not served the defendants. In the court's prior order, the court warned that a hearing would be held once all the defendants had been served within the 14-day period. Despite the court's prior order, the plaintiffs still have not served all the defendants despite multiple chances and reminders. The plaintiffs ultimately filed a document with several proofs of service on July 10, 2023 in a related case, but have filed nothing to suggest they even tried to serve the defendants in this case. It is hereby ordered that the plaintiff's counsel shall appear in courtroom 1 of the United States Courthouse in Del Rio, Texas, for a sanctions hearing. Signed and entered, Elijah Moses, Chief United States District Judge. Like, ooh, somebody gonna get spanked.
Yep.
Especially, I like the fact that this is like first day of law school sort of thing. Is the serving the defendants.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what are they doing? I like it. I like that they're screwing it up that much.
Oh yeah, it reminds me also of some of in the Rittenhouse trial, some of the stuff that the prosecution tried to pull.
Oh yeah,
and the very valid point that was made there, and I think may also apply here, is if they are willing to pull this stuff in a high-profile case where they're not likely to get away with it, what are they pulling in the low-profile cases where they're not going to be so closely watched?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right, what else do we have on the list?
This is, I think, Oddball, did you add the one about Oregon?
Yeah. So, a district court judge and Mark at Four Boxes Diner did a wonderful job covering it. But the judge has ruled that no, the Oregon. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm having some real issues with the feedback. So Oregon has ballot measure 114, which bans the sale of high-capacity magazines and
Not just sale, but
requires-
possession.
What's that, Erin?
Not just sale, but possession. I mean, there is a grandfather clause, I think, but it's once it went into effect, it is forbidden.
Okay, I'm going off of the article that just simply says future purchases.
Well, okay.
But at least the purchases of large capacity mags and would also require a purchase permit for firearms, and the permit would require applicants to complete a safety class and a federal background check. And the judge bent over backwards and did some wonderful yoga to try to figure out how she could rule that, nope, this is completely fine in light of Bruin. And actually said that there is a long history and tradition per Bruin of such regulations, which is interesting. Oh, that's right. She part of her argument was that since there were regulations on storage of ammunition and powder, therefore the state can regulate the size of magazines. Of course, the storage of powder has been regulated because if you store a huge amount of powder in, say, your bathroom closet and there's a spark, well, you have problems. And also said that the Bruin decision allows, quote, for new firearms regulations if there's an unprecedented societal concern.
Which I thought was interesting because I don't remember seeing that in there.
You are correct. And in fact, that's basically her saying, well, doing the whole balancing states' interest thing, which the Bruin decision explicitly
says no.
Stated it did not. And also one thing that was in the Four Boxes Diner coverage that isn't in the article I posted is that she dismissed the expert testimony of Moss Ayub because Moss is a member of the Second Amendment Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Never mind that he is one of the, if not the most well-respected judicial court experts.
Oh yeah,
in the subject of use of firearms.
I mean,
calling him a preeminent subject matter expert is probably not an exaggeration.
I mean, the man has taught police how to shoot for decades. I mean, 30, 40 years.
Oh yeah,
and he's also taught them when not to shoot.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and also, like I said, he's also spent decades in a courtroom as an expert witness, specifically when dealing with firearms. So hopefully the folks, the plaintiffs appeal this, and I feel that this is a rather easy case to appeal because she frankly made things up in whole cloth to support her decision and made some I think the proper legal speak is interesting
creative
in her decision. And it's just another one of those. There's a stack of judges that have done everything they can to straight up ignore SCOTUS's ruling, which, as Mark from Four Boxes Diner has been very happy to remind folks on his YouTube channel, the district and appellate courts are, according to the Constitution, are inferior courts to the Supreme Court, not the other way around. And they really need to start acting like it. And it annoys the heck out of me.
Yes. So I added a couple of things because I didn't want to end on that note of just annoyance and frustration and possibly some anger at this gymnastic judge.
Mm.
And these two links are both from our good friends at The Reload. One of them is an article from contributing reporter Jake Fogelman. Poll: New Yorkers concerned over crime purchasing guns in response. And this is a Siena College Research Institute, SCRI. Siena polls are, I don't know how well known they are outside of the state, but they are very commonly referenced in the state. And basically, it's they found that 61% are either very or somewhat concerned they might be a victim of a crime. Basically, 1 in 8 respondents said they purchased a firearm for self-defense in the past 12 months, including more than 1 in 6 respondents living in New York City, which I find very interesting. Because if they bought a firearm in New York, they live in New York City and they bought a firearm in the last 12 months, that means that they started the process over a year ago. Because New York City.
New York City. That's
where salsa comes from. But it's let's see. Quote, a majority of New Yorkers say that they are concerned about their or their family's safety when thinking about being in public places, the places we all go, including schools, stores, or religious institutions. Crime and the threat of crime is on the minds of many of us as we simply go through our everyday lives. Most say they are no more worried than ever, but over 40% say it's the worst it's ever been. So if a good statistical sampling of New Yorkers are concerned about crime and purchasing guns, and most of these polls, they pretty much ignore anything outside of New York City. I don't know where the spread of them came from for this Siena poll, but it's interesting that they specifically called out a significant number of New York City residents looking into purchasing firearms. So that's something.
That's going to play in an interesting manner with New York's Concealed Carry Improvement Act, which wants to restrict, I don't know what the technical term is, of all the places people can carry.
Prohibited locations.
I thought it was sensitive areas, but yeah.
Both terms have been used.
Okay.
But yeah, basically, as Governor Hochul said when asked where would people be allowed to carry, I don't know, maybe a few streets.
Yeah.
Because after the Supreme Court said that they could not declare the entirety of the island of Manhattan a sensitive location, they went ahead and basically declared the entire island of Manhattan a sensitive location.
Well, we'll compromise. We'll declare 95% of Manhattan sensitive. There, that's not all of it. We're complying.
Yeah. Yep, that's right up there with somebody wants to cut off all your fingers. You don't want any fingers cut off. We'll compromise at 8. But it's still, like I said, it's interesting that even New Yorkers are willing to come out and say, New York crime is bad, I'm getting a gun.
Mm-hmm.
Weer'd, you awake?
Yes. And I will note that I was in New Hampshire this afternoon, and there was no gun crime there. And my daughter is in Maine, and there's no gun crime there. As a matter of fact, they're the first and second safest states in the union. And it could be very, very easily argued that they are the first and second most gun-friendly states in the known universe because we have not discovered guns on other planets.
I would put Maine and New Hampshire with their current laws definitely in the top 5. I don't know if I would say 1 and 2. I'd have to do some more research, but definitely in the top 5. I mean, New Hampshire has long been very gun-friendly.
New Hampshire is solidly number 1. I can't think of any that would beat them out. Maine does have a well, not anymore clearly, but they didn't before. They did have a discretion clause in the books, but nobody ever used it. So the idea of a bad conduct or things like that for your permit issuance. But of course, that Bruin took care of that, and then also the permitless carry also took care of that. And so, yeah, if you want to own it, you can buy it in Maine, and if you want to carry it, you can carry it in Maine. And there's not that many places where you can't carry a gun in Maine.
Like I said, I don't have all the details for thorough research, but I would say definitely they're both in the top 5.
All right.
And then to close us out, also from our friends at The Reload, this one is from Stephen Boyle. 20 attorneys general file brief challenging Delaware AR-15 and magazine ban. A coalition of 20 Republican attorneys general requested the U.S. Court of Appeals reverse a Delaware District Court decision upholding bans on assault weapons and large-capacity magazines. Now, this article was posted on the 13th. I don't have the up-to-date list, but I believe several other states have added to that 20. But I'm hoping one of them is Tennessee, because at the time this article was put up, Tennessee was not on the list, which annoys me. But it's, again, the kind of coming together of the pro-gun coalitions is promising, I think. Especially because we're at, 27 permitless or constitutional carry states now?
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was just 26.
How's your AG in Tennessee right now?
Oddball, what would you say? I would say pretty good. Not as good as I would like.
Yeah, RHE is the one that when somebody sued because of the 21 age limit instead of 18, he went ahead and said, "Oh yeah, this has already been declared unconstitutional in another state, so I'm not going to defend it."
Which, that part is fine. It was the other part that he did, while I like the outcome, I don't appreciate the method. Where he didn't wait for the legislature to change the law. He just said, yeah, permit classes, you got to allow 18-year-olds in now. But it still hasn't gone through the legislature, last I heard.
Well, I mean, his reasoning was that the circuit that governs over us has said that that's unconstitutional. So,
and that's valid. I agree with that. But he doesn't make state law. He doesn't pass laws.
He can see that it's negated,
right?
And that's what he was doing.
Yeah, but it just I don't know. Something I read something about it that just kind of rubbed me a little wrong. But I don't remember what it is now because I'm exhausted. But
well, I think since we're all tired, I think we can. If is there any further notes we want to get from the round table?
Well, that new Springfield handgun we talked about on Handgun Radio last night.
It does look pretty cool, and I do like the fact that it's another modular chassis style handgun. So therefore, the sky's the limit on how it can be configured.
Yep, I really like, and I hope it works out well, the modular red dot mounting system.
Mm-hmm.
My only concern is that people are not going to know how to properly hold the gun with the standard with the standard grip frame.
Oh yeah, because they well, I mean the 3D printed world can 3D print grip frames with the word grip zone.
Okay, that's comforting.
Hey, Shadow Legends.
All right, so tell me more about this red dot thing.
It's the Springfield. Is it the Echelon? Echelon,
yeah.
Yeah, the Springfield Echelon. It has this optics interface. So when you remove the plate, that's just the spacer, there's a whole series of holes that are set to various standards for different manufacturers of red dots. And these self-locking pins. So if you've ever seen the red dot mounting area on a handgun, there's usually space for 2 screws, and there are 2 little pegs sticking up that interface with the bottom of the red dot to lock it in place. Because manufacturers have not decided on a standard pattern, Springfield has come up with their system, the variable interface system they call it, and they say it allows users to mount over 30 optics directly to the slide without the use of adapter plates, simply by rearranging the self-locking pins.
Nice.
Yeah, here, I'll toss the link in the chat so you can take a look. And Weer'd, would you like me to put the link to that in the show
That
notes?
sounds like a plan.
I can do that.
As a rule of thumb, if you think that a link belongs in the show notes, put it in the show notes.
We like links in show notes.
Mhm.
Worst case scenario, people don't click on them.
Well, I don't want to overstep my bounds.
Well, don't worry, David. I'll spray you with the bottle. You'll get the hose again.
Well, joke's on you. I'm into that stuff.
Put the lotion in the basket.
All right.
I'll put the lotion in your basket.
You know who
where,
put the
Mrs.?
lotion in my basket?
Our listeners.
Our listeners. Don't read it. I don't know what it means.
Our poor listeners. That's something that they cannot unsee or unhear.
Thank you so much to our listeners, each and every one of you, but a very special thanks to all our supporters on Patreon. To become a Patreon patron, go to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers podcast to sign up. Patrons get an early release of the podcast, plus bonus contents like the hilarious blooper reel. I actually just finished editing one today. The ACP film tracks, which are, got some really good movies as of late. So there's some good ones coming up and just recently posted, and the ACP Mag Dump.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends, both online and off.
I got a blog. It's weerdworld.com. That's WEERD world.com. And you can hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
And assuming the world stops kicking me and I'm able to write again, you can get more from me at linktree/Erin Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Erin Paulette, all one word.
And Oddball, where can people find you?
You can find me at gunscarstech.com. I hopefully will actually get something else written up this month, and on the ACP Facebook group.
And David?
Well, in addition to here, I'm also a somewhat frequent interloper on Handgun Radio, and I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. I'm also a published author with books, with stories rather, in books under my author name of Brenna Bach and my real name of David Bach. And hopefully they'll allow me back on Geeks, Gadgets, and Guns one day. Probably just not with Oddball.
Probably not.
We were good.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
Oh, God.
Now it's time for Erin's magic. Our level of exhaustion is assorted, and so is our podcast.
I'm not Fran Drescher, but neither is Weer'd. Who we are is assorted, and so is our podcast. Good night.
Good night.